Hello folks, I'm Nook Schoenfeld. I'm here with Richard Cadena and Tim Grievous at the High End Systems Studio in Austin, Texas. We're here to show you how to make a punt page for a concert. Quickest way to get everything going is to only have 7 or 8 focuses, 10 color positions, a few effects, and as many faders as possible. First of all, what I normally do is I always have some conventionals, basically because when you're punting, you have to go through stuff fast and you never want to leave a stage black. So the first thing I always do is on the front truss, I'll throw a half dozen conventionals like Fresnel's. If you look at the ESP drawing here, I've got 6 wash lights. I will take them and record them into fader 1. That way, no matter what, I can always light the front audience with a light there. I put those in one fader all the time, so no matter what, it's on the end of the console. I can grab it, and no matter if I get lost or confused, I always have light. Next, I always throw some audience lighting in here as well. In this case, I've got 4 mole lights across the top of the front truss. Everybody who knows what a mole is, I record them into the fader next to it. By that, every time I bring this fader up, they should come on. Faders on every console have different options you can use with them. Whenever dealing with conventional fixtures, I tend to use the option called highest takes precedence. Under each cue list window, if you choose your cue list, for instance, this one I just put up is the moles, there'll be a button that says options. And this one that says use HTP on my hog right here. That means that no matter what I do, when I bring up this fader, those lights are going to come on. The only thing that would ever bring them down would be the Grandmaster would probably override it. Otherwise, any other cue will never affect an HTP fader. They're very important for that reason. Okay, back to palettes. Then, basically, I usually have more wash lights than hard lights on here. On the downstage truss, I will usually throw some wash lights. In this case, I've got 5 wash lights. They are studio beams in this case. And I will park them on a band focus for the entire show, or try and wash the whole edge of the stage. By doing that, no matter what, I don't need them in effects. I need them for front light. Because chances are there's 4 band members here, and I will not have 4 spotlights to follow them around. So if I cover their home base, they're there. If they walk out of their home base or that light, I simply bring up my Fresnel's here to add some extra light in the holes. I have different focus positions up here that I've recorded in. And for the rear lights, I have, in this case, 8 studio beams in the back. Now, if I wanted to, I'll have about 6 focuses for them, and that's it. Straight is always straight across the whole band, so that any kind of effect or circle effects or anything I come in with, I can put them there, and I'll be sure to cover the entire band. Of course, the other focuses would be a fan focus that splits everything out, a cross focus. That's when all the lights from stage right go to stage left and stage left to stage right. What we call an XXX focus, because you have a series of X's up there. That way, if I turn just the odd lights on, they'll go one way, the even lights will go the other way. We always have an audience focus because every rock show, every concert always has an audience ballet at some time where the band wants to see everybody dancing and clapping, and it adds to the excitement. Other focuses are a high focus. That's typical for any time you want to fly lights out for a dramatic effect. You need a high, someplace for them to go, or someplace to start from. Sometimes they'll be off and start in the high focus and then come on and come down to a straight focus or to the stage for a dramatic effect. I also will tend to focus on different band members, especially with the downstage center guy. He's usually the rock star. He usually, at some point, everything stops and the lights got to go to him. As well as that, I might take those rear beams and say, hey, we need a guitar focus over here. I'll record that in here. And on the console, just call it Git. for guitar, because if there's a solo, I'm going to go there. Same thing with the drummer. I might say that and then have to tilt them down to go to the drummer, but you get the idea. Again, that was 8 focuses, and that's all I need for the whole show. One other thing that I should remember is I try to throw a few lights on the floor. Just downstage, upstage, anywhere. It doesn't matter, because these will fill out your whole scene and make it eye focus, make it look so much bigger. Even though they're not focused on any band member, they're just in different focuses. Now when we get to focuses, there's 3 different focuses basically you have. You always have to light the money. That means light the band. No matter what, if they're not lit, you're not hired again. End of story. Besides that, you want to light the scenery, whether it's a backdrop, or some stairs, some ramps, set pieces that the client has up there with podiums or sculptures that they've brought along. If you don't light them, nobody's going to see them. And then not only is the set artist mad at you, the client that just spent all this money to rent some set pieces for your event is wondering why they're not lit, nobody's seeing them, why did they spend money in the first place? The third thing is what we call the aerial focus or graphic focuses. All they're doing is lighting some smoke in the air. So if I were to take all my studio beams from behind and put them in a graphic focus such as my XXX, that looks beautiful. But I still need to light the band. That's where I take my hard edge lights. In this case, we have some studio spots in the back here. The difference between a wash and a hard edge light is a wash has a soft edge around it and looks more like a blob of light intended to just light a whole general area. A hard edge light is more like a spotlight. It's meant to pick people out or put gobo patterns in order to do that. In this case, I'm going to light my band with the hard edge lights while the other lights are in a graphic focus. Now looking at this, you really can't tell. It looks like a mishmash. But if I take the rear lights and I put them in one color, like Congo blue, now you see the white hard edge lights lighting the band members. And that looks great, except they're not front lit. So then I would say, oh, the front beams. We turn them on, hit the band with them, and put them in a color. Say pink. Now I've got some front light on the band so that everybody in the audience can see them. I'm lighting some air with some wash lights, and I'm highlighting every band member with a hard edge light. Pretty simple formula. If I choose to take the hard edge lights, which I will do at times, and they will be the studio spots again, say I put them in a high focus. Excuse me. Now I'll go, oh, okay, the only thing front lighting them is the front light, and there's no wash lights backlighting them. So if I do that, I would probably want to take my rear beams to the band, and I might tell them to be another color. You can spend all day mixing hundreds of colors. It's not going to help you. At one of these events where it's a one-off or something, you need 10 colors. I always start with the first 3 colors you have in every color wheel, which are cyan, magenta, and yellow. So on a console, I will take all my moving lights at full and say I will take them all and roll the cyan to full. At which case, I will then record that into a palette that says cyan. I repeat that with the magenta and yellow. That'll make sense later on when I talk about effects and how you might want to just roll the magenta effect in and out to make stuff. But if I find besides that, I pick the rest of the colors of the rainbow. Everybody uses green at some time, everybody uses blue, and then reds and ambers. Besides that, the next 2 colors I use are pink is one end of the light spectrum, and Congo blue because it's the most sexy color ever invented. It's kind of like lavender but almost blue. And of course white. You can't get away from white. Other things I like to add in are some ACLs. They're aircraft landing lights and PARs. They will come on in groups because occasionally you need to bump them on. In this case, I've got 2 sets of ACLs here and 2 inside. But first, I'm going to record one set here as my outer ACLs and one set as my inner ACLs. Now that I've recorded these, I'm going to go back into my options again and tell these, because they're conventional lights, to be HTP on both these faders. Now, no matter where I am in a show, I should be able to just go bam, 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 like that, and flash the lights back and forth on to add an extra bump. Basically, they're called accent lights. If there's a big drum crash or a big audience participation thing, I might hit these to come up with some big rock look full of fans. And they're just add-ons into that. Now, when I'm punting a console, the most faders you have, the better. But what I basically do is I'll try and keep one console. For instance, in this case, we're using the full bore Roadhog. And I will have these 9 or 10 faders here just run conventionals, because I probably won't be over here that much. They're in between stuff for accents such as bringing up moles. Then on another group of faders, I will put just movements and intensities, different ones for both. Sometimes I'll have all different movements that bring up the lights in about 5 faders, and then another 5 faders full of intensity chases and things like that will go to. The last 10 faders, I'll throw color combinations and gobo combinations in. Generally, when I'm punting, I put 2 seconds time on any movement, because that's a good general rule to have. Anytime I'm moving the lights from plan A to plan B or position 1 to position 2, 2 seconds seems to work great. However, color, half the lights you get to use in the world have no color mixing. They're just color wheels. So I tend to make all my colors in 0 time on one page, and then if I have a time, I'll go to another page and copy all those cues and make them 2-second time. Why? Because if you're in a ballad, a slow song, you don't want colors bumping and snapping. It looks too ugly. You want them to slowly fade sexily from, say, Congo to magenta over 2 seconds. But in a rock show, you need to be able to bump them back and forth. So the next thing I'm going to do is I've pretty much got enough conventionals here on these 4 because I don't have a whole lot. I have my ACLs, my moles. So I'm going to put some intensities here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put just my front beams on. No focus position or any of that. I'm just recording them as an intensity here and labeling them, and I will call that front. As in front wash. I know they're my only ones, and I want them to be in the cue list. I am just going to take them options, and what I'm telling this fader to do now, instead of being an HTP fader, I am just going to tell it to going off 0. That means the minute I lift this fader up, it's activating the cue. However, I don't want any time in this cue. I'm probably defaulted at 2 seconds here, but if I close this window, tell this to be 0, that means it's always going to fade at the speed. You might say, okay, well, if it's intensity, why aren't you making it an HTP fader like the conventionals? Because if I did that and had this up and went into a chase, the HTP would override the chase all the time, and I don't want that. I want to be able to have both run either way. Next, I'll take my rear and floor beams. I'll turn them to full. Same thing. I record that into a group here, tell it to be 0 time. I will go into my options again and tell it to going off 0. So now anytime I bring up this fader, I have my rear lights. This one has my front and rear. Last of all, I will take my spots, put them in here, which are my hard edge lights. Again, once I've recorded that, I'll tell them to go off 0, and again, have to make it 0 time. If I don't, if I leave this at 5 seconds, say, I can throw this fader up fast, but it still takes 5 seconds to come in. and by then you're late. Nobody wants to be late. So we're going back here and just remembering to always make all your intensity faders 0 time. If they're not HTP, 0 time. The next I do is I take a chase where I can take all my lights, and I'll usually take them at 0 and put the option and go into an effect. And give me a second, open effect. There we go. If I take all my lights at 0 and I tell the intensity to be in, say, a sine wave, for any console that would work. Now they'll come on and off slowly, but I need them to go a lot faster than that. So I will usually do this and look at the speed as they come on and off, and then I will offset it so that I have a chase doing that. So that usually what works for me is a 3-part chase or a 3-step. And as I'm doing this, I can figure out this is a better speed, a slower speed. That's good. I'm going to record this into the next fader, and I'm going to call it just an intensity chase. So if I have open effect, open list is how I name these, and I'll call it INT chase, intensity chase. Then anytime it gets too exciting, I bring that up, the lights will start doing that, usually during a chorus or a guitar solo. Famous places. However, the difference in options here is I'm not going to do anything there. What I'm going to do instead of that, instead of making it a going off 0, is I make it something called a crossfade ICBF. Every console calls it something different, but the idea is as you bring up